I want to just introduce myself. I'm Halton Cheadle. I'm a Professor of Emeritus at the University of Cape Town, and I'm chairing the panel. Secondly, we have Ms. Lulama Matanga, who's a competition law expert with extensive experience earned through her previous roles in the Competition Commission and as a director of the law firm Bowman Gilfillan. We also have Ms. Louise Duplessis from the Competition Commission, who's here in her capacity as head of the inquiry's technical team and evidence leader. She and the team of lawyers and economists in the front row here will be assisting the panel in soliciting evidence and analysing the evidence for the inquiry. I've given a fairly lengthy introduction on the first day of the hearing. I don't want to do that again, but I do want to just draw your attention to how we conduct the hearing. This is not a court case. It's an inquiry. It's an attempt by us to try and understand the manner in which the retail market operates. And so, although we ask questions, our questions are directed really to getting more information, more evidence, and coming to some understanding of the market. If a stakeholder wishes to give evidence which is confidential, then it's permissible for that stakeholder to request us, Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs, Mr. Dumi Msila. Oh, excellent. Mzila, you've preempted me. I was going to ask you if you had a presentation. Mzila, would you introduce your panel members, one of whom has already been here, Mr. Selebi. Selepa.
Yeah.
Not Selebi, eh?
Tsepiso Selepe.
Yeah. And I do also want to thank you for coming on such short notice. We really do appreciate your cooperation.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you very much. You already know me, Tsepiso Selepe from Department of Economic Development. We're from business regulations, which consisting of consumer protection services and regulation services. I've got my colleagues here, as I promised that they'll be here today, and they'll be presenting. Can I just introduce themselves? They'll just introduce themselves, yeah.
Good morning. My name is Dumi Mzila from the Regulation Services of the Department of Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. My name is Sanele Ngubane. I'm also from the same department under Regulation Services. We are responsible for regulating both formal and informal business in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Thank you.
Good morning again. I've been told to show it there. All right. Okay. We prepared a very short presentation for today's papers, and as Alexanel has just mentioned, our purpose is to give support and regulation to both formal and informal businesses in the province. I've been made to understand that there's been a lot of questions around informal economy as to what government is doing about it. So most part of the presentation, I will dwell on that one and try to highlight the inroads or the interventions that are positive that have been granted the sector. But just to give you a short brief as to who we are governed, or we take our operational mandate from the Businesses Act 71 of 1991, as well as the provincial policy on informal economy that was approved by Cabinet in 2010. Our objective mainly is to create a conducive regulatory environment for the sustained development and support to both formal and informal businesses in the province. But our role as regulators largely is to build, strengthen, and align institutions of economic development, as well as to establish and manage policy framework that is implemented by municipalities so that we can monitor regulatory compliance. By that way, we're able to create an enabling environment that support those kind of businesses. I want to go now to the legislative milestones. When we say we want to achieve a conducive regulatory framework, we cannot as government go at it alone. It is a participatory and an inclusive process that has to include the bigger segment of our population. So what happened with the informal economy in the past is that it was seen as a nuisance. In every corner of our country, we know the harassment that has happened, people forcefully removed from where they're trading, their goods or trading assets being impounded from them, put to jail, made to pay hefty fines. But government actually in 2007 said enough is enough. Informal economy is one of the largest contributors to our economy. And when they say not verified yet, they say informal economy alone surpasses the contribution of mining sector combined to the economy of the country. And if we look at the stats that was done by independent group around Durban, if we take the 1,000 traders a day, buying stock of 1,000 rand each, how much is that they are spending to sustain our economy? Multiply that by 30, it's a huge amount of money. Durban alone, but if you take the entire province and the entire country, it's a huge contribution. So government said in KZN we have to take informal economy seriously. So the requisite papers, your green paper, white paper, were developed and tabled to provincial cabinet, which then led to the establishment of the think tank, which was made up of government, civil society, labor, municipalities, and other organs to direct the development of the provincial informal economy policy. That mandate was derived largely from the Business Development Act and the Businesses Act of 1991. This act, as we speak now, is about to be repealed. That I must say up front, because it is pre-constitutional. It is a 1991 legislation when our constitution was came into effect in 1996. So we found that most of the provisions contained in there do not directly speak to the political, social, and economic landscape as we find it today. So what has happened is that, we'll speak about that towards the end, the development of the new KZN bill, which we will give a reference to in terms of what it aims to do to achieve the development of the informal economy. So in 2010, that policy was adopted by the provincial cabinet. And in 2011, provided by that policy, the department facilitated the establishment of municipal, district, and provincial informal economy chambers. Because one of the things that were raised by the people at the grassroots level is that if government has to go and speak to people, if government has to provide resources, if government has to provide support mechanisms, funding, business support services, who do they speak to? So the policy provides for the creation of a one body that speaks for all traders. So it cannot never be imposed on people. It was a consultative process which took a lot of years to prepare, but eventually in 2011, the policy was launched together with the provincial, municipal, and district informal economy chambers by the then former MEC. And in 2013, the MEC convened what you call a Provincial Informal Economy Summit, which was aimed to say, since 2010 when the policy was launched, how much has the province achieved? where are the bottlenecks, what needs to be done, how it should be done. So that gave rise to a lot of other issues that needed to be done in the support of that particular sector. So in 2014, there was a massive interest in the informal economy countrywide. We had the International Labour Organization coming to KZN to benchmark as to what actually has happened, what are the successes, what has been achieved, how can they help to assist the province and the country in achieving necessary support mechanisms for the sector. Also, in that instance, the Small Business Development Department has just been established. They also used the KZN policy to develop what we call NIBUS, which is a National Informal Business Upliftment Strategy, which now is a national document regulating and supporting the sector. In that instant as well, KZN was part and parcel of the deliberations and negotiations around the International Labour Organization's recommendation 204, which was eventually adopted by the nations of the world in 2015 in Geneva. And it was led by our colleagues at the Department of Labour, and we participated in that conference, and we are happy that we were able to give credence to those processes because of the inroads that the province has managed to achieve for the development of the informal economy. Also in 2015, the KZN Business Bill was developed. We're going to speak more on that one towards the end. And in 2016, the bill enjoyed the in-principle approval by KZN Cabinet. After the ILO recommendation was adopted by the nations of the world, there came a necessity for the province as well to say, what are we doing? Because in the past, our policy and strategy concentrated on the enterprise side of informal economy. But we will understand that from the definition of the ILO and the definition of the KZN government in terms of informality, it does not only affect enterprises, it also affects people employed in the informal sector. Like you find that in one Pick and Pay, there is a register of 500 people, but only 30 are formally employed. The rest of them are casual workers, they're wage workers, they've got no benefits. We speak of things of social protection and everything else. So we said, we need now to focus on a wider informal economy sector, although our department's mandate is only on enterprise development and enterprises as well. But we need to come up with a plan that is going to be transversal, to be supported by all sectors of government, to say we need to do something about informality. So the master plan was developed in 2016, is still in its draft stages. Because of the transversality of recommendation 204, it needs a lot of consultation and a lot of participation by other sector departments as well. But in 2017, we just concluded yesterday the public consultative processes on the bill. So before I go to highlight what the bill purports to achieve, I just want to give a short status quo report in KZN as yet, that we are the first province ever to have developed an informal economy policy, and the first province to develop an instrument aligned to recommendation 204, which is the master plan, and the first to produce a developmental legislation that supports informal economy. It's no longer a nuisance. Informal economy is here to stay, and it is a cushion for those people who have lost jobs in the formal sector. We know that the job losses and retrenchments happen every other day. So where do people find refuge to support their families and their livelihoods? They find that refuge in the informal economy. But it is the least supported sector in the entire country. So we're saying, by developing these instruments, we're saying we need to focus more on the support mechanisms for that. So, and also, what is noticeable, we had 54 municipalities in the past. No, sorry, 52, yes. Now we've got 43. And all of those municipalities now have an informal economy in place, with about 40% having been approved by full councils, which means that all municipalities now in the province are able to provide the resources for the informal economy sector. What is nice about it as well, we've been able to work with COCTA to ensure that the municipal planning tool called the IDP in the Integrated Development Plan now has informal economy as an indicator, which means now that informal economy will have to be budgeted for and services and infrastructure provided for the informal economy. Also, the Small Business Development Department has developed instruments within its NIPA strategy to support informality. One of them is ITAP, which stands for Informal Trade Upliftment Project, which aims to recruit a certain number of informal economy actors, provide facilitation in training, skills development, skills transfer, and also fund infrastructure. And also IMET, which is an informal micro enterprise development program, which works in the same line as ITAP. And also, since we derive our mandate from the Businesses Act also provide for licensing of businesses. When we define informal businesses, as per definition, those people are given permits to be able to trade. But for the formal businesses, they have to be licensed in a way that suits their form of business. Lastly, is your food vending outlets, your entertainment facilities, your adult entertainment, and then hawking in perishable foodstuffs. Right now, all municipalities in the province have authority to issue or refuse to issue business licenses. And also because of the number of illegal businesses that we find in our midst, in our economy spaces, we've been having a problem and a lot of influx of complaints to our Office of the Consumer Protector of businesses who do not comply with minimum standards of health, minimum standards of product packaging, minimum standards of doing anything else, and they're continuously flouting regulations and also affecting consumer rights and consumer, health. So together we've been able to garner support from other agencies of state and other entities to form what we call ICORF. I think Tsepiso spoke to that one, which is an integrated complaints and regulatory forum, to be able to forcefully demand compliance from those people. Because, I mean, it's been a long time. You can't go to a shop and do something and then after 2 days you don't have recourse. So we're trying to say, KZN, we are here to stay, we need to comply with the laws. Because if you don't protect the health and the safety of our public, then we're not doing our job. So the bill, the one that I mentioned in the beginning, is there to provide for an integrated business regulatory framework so that we can have uniformity in the province. And also to protect consumers against unhealthy, harmful, and unsafe goods and business practices. That we need to establish officially people that will deal with licensing and permitting and registration within the municipal space. Also, we need to have a standardized framework for regulation of informal trading. That one is contained largely in section 47 of the bill, which gives direction to the department and other entities to say, you need to provide support financially, skills transfer, and everything else to the informal economy. It is now a legislative imperative. Yes, we had a policy. A policy is suggestive for government and entities to do A, B, C, and D, but now we seek to compel everybody else involved in that space to say, we need to garner support and provide resources. And also, that section speaks of the graduation of small businesses. You know, if you look at recommendation 204, it is a recommendation that deals with transitioning informality to formality. But as government, what is it that we need to do? What enablers we need to put into place? So that particular section deals in this bill with the support of that sector. Also, the bill provides for the appointment of a provincial inspectorate to be able to monitor businesses whether they comply or not. Also, we are proposing the establishment of 24-hour zones because we feel that the province is rich in so many aspects that can develop the economy. But the lack of a dedicated and designed, purposefully designed areas for 24-hour trading are lacking. You look at the route between the N2 south to north, you don't get any 24-hour zone. You go to the back, no 24-hour trading zones. But if you go to similar countries of the same size across the world, you find those zones are there and they're able to contribute positively to the economy of those places. So we're asking ourselves, why not in this province? So that's one provision that is here. Also, if you look at the way our economy is structured, everybody wants a piece of the cake. So we have so many different formations. You've got your ACHIPS, your NAVCOGs, your whatever. It's good to be associated with those agencies, but when as government you want to plan across, who do we speak to? So the bill is proposing for the establishment of one provincial association of business to be able to garner support from its constituencies, to be able to engage government for the provision of services and support to their constituencies. If you look at this bill, in summary, it is very developmental. Rather than being punitive and regulatory, it's giving effect to the development and support to businesses. But I want to touch base with the second last slide as to what other programs we have in place, not only for the informal economy, but for the entire business support. The former MEC 2 years back tasked the department to come up with a bulk buying model. In the past 3 years, we've been dealing with what people call xenophobia, xenophobic attacks on foreign nationals. The research that has been done by different people and agencies and organizations show that it's not really xenophobia, but it's a war for space, it's a war for markets, it's a war on prices. Some people have taken over the price market, the supply market and everything market, but as government, we're sitting back and doing nothing about it. So from the engagement that we've had from that research, people are saying, if we are to win against competition and be competitive as the African or as black people living in townships and in rural areas, government needs to support programs that gives us leverage to be able to be competitive. So we, as a department, have developed, which has been in principle approved by the MEC, yet to be approved by Cabinet and be launched by the MEC, what we call a bulk buying and warehousing model, where we as a department and our agencies like Itala approach directly your producers like your Unilever, like your Tiger Brands, for them to supply directly to those warehouses for accessing by the local traders, from your informal traders to your school supply nutrition program, to all those people that supply foodstuffs. And so these warehouses are going to be 11 of them in the entire province. The first one has already been identified and refurbished in Eastern, in KZN, which is the first that the MEC will be launching anytime soon, to say, as government, we are serious about bringing productivity to our people, that they are competitive. Because at the end of the day, if we are going to be fighting for prices, we must fight in a way that we provide enablers for our people as well to be able to have enough access and direct access to those producers. Then if a tin of fish will get from macro for 21 Rand, you'll be able to get the same tin for 11 Rand directly from your Tiger brand. Then how much you're going to sell the tin stuff? You're going to sell for 15 Rand. You're getting a competitive advantage. So as government, this is what we're trying to create so that we can be able to say our people are having a fair share of the market. The associative business I've spoken about. Also, there's another program called Multi-Tenancy Framework, which is provided for in the bill as well. The reason being, if you go to the rural areas and the urban areas, the township areas, they've been long-standing business entities from great-grandfathers going to their sons and grandsons of businesses that have been there. But because of the advent of the development of malls going into the township areas and the rural areas, all those businesses fail and stop to trade. But if you go and look at the mall, there's not even one single person from the community who owns even one single shop. The only people that own anything would be your big shops, your national brands, because the entry is of an exclusive nature. So this framework is trying to say, for any new mall development in any rural or township area, there need to be a component, dedicated component to benefit the locals, the local businesses in terms of tenancy and also ownership of that particular mall. So that framework is in the pipeline. Our sister business unit, it will be working on the document, and it's still gonna go for public participation as well. But I can tell you, some people don't like that. Also, what we're intending to do, we're creating what you call an MSME academy. We're promoting that one of the deficiencies that our business people have are skills. You can have this big dream, wanting to do that. But if you don't have the skills, necessary skills and competencies to do it, you're going to fail. So the MSME Academy, they're going to be one major in KZN, but disseminated per district, so that each district will have its own academy that is managed at a provincial level for the purposes of upskilling our people, giving the necessary support, mentoring, incubation, simulation, because in those warehouses that are going to be there in those districts, part of the function of this warehouse is to provide simulation for those people. And over and above that, KZN has developed and is about to launch, my boss that side is responsible for that, an automated informal economy registration and permitting system. That one is, if as government you don't know who's when doing what, how can you probably plan? How can you develop the indices to tell us how the informal economy and the business sector is doing? So that automated system is going to help us to be able to report, to identify, to plan, and be able to monitor how we're doing in terms of support to the businesses. Also, we've signed an MOUs, several of them bilaterals and multilaterals, like the one with COGTA, SALGA, and DART, because we said we are responsible for certain legislation and policy, but COGTA is responsible to manage and administer affairs at municipal level with SALGA. So if we do not have a common understanding as to how we're going to use our resources wisely and effectively and efficiently, we're going to be duplicating what you do. So we've had an MOU signed between the four parties, and it's working very well, and it's directed by the Communications Forum, which meet at least 4 times a year and as when required. Also, we've developed an MOU and signed it with the wholesale and retail sector. Why? Because a large component of the people in the informal economy sector are in the wholesale and retail trade. So we said it would be better if we have the sector on board so that they be able to provide the necessary enablers for the support and graduation of those people in that particular sector. With Home Affairs as well, because if we are to legitimize businesses, we need to know the legitimacy of residency. We can't just sign everybody willy-nilly to give permits and licenses, because as per Immigration Act, it is illegal to have assisted an illegal immigrant in this country. So we needed to make sure that our municipalities and our government departments are able to vet any possible application from a foreign national, not being xenophobic per se, but we have to, as government, make sure that anybody who's in our training spaces is legitimate and being able to and is allowed to do a good job. And lastly, with the CIPC and SARS, for the same purposes of legitimacy of businesses and legitimacy of residents. So where to from now? We're hoping that we are going to be creating an environment that provides for voluntary compliance. That is through the inspections and regulatory enforcement that we're doing. And also we need to create a business ethic that protects the rights of workers and of consumers. Extension of social protection for all. Eradication of informalizing formal jobs. Like I made an example of Pick and Pay, whereby they're supposed to be formal business, employ people full-time, subscribe to your UIF and all other requirements by your labor act, which doesn't happen. So we're looking at a space whereby formal businesses remain formal, they don't informalize what they do. Also, we need to, through these processes, we need to arrive at a platform for dialogue that will promote social and economic cohesion. And also, we need to ensure that all organs of state recognizes the role of informal economy contribution to the economy and provide adequate support there towards. Kyalibuch. I don't know whether my colleague Sanele would like to add something.
Thank you very much indeed. I wonder, just explain the bulk buying arrangement. Who will run the warehouse? So, as I understand, you're going to create a warehouse in every district. Just I mean, how is that going to be established? Who's going to be responsible for running it? Who contracts with the suppliers? To what extent are local suppliers going to be incorporated? I wonder if you could just flesh that out for us.
Thank you, Chair. The model that has been developed, it took about 18 months to develop. It was all fights and whatever. But the way it's going to work, we've got an entity called Itala, which is Itala Finance, but the Itala portion of micro enterprise development. We've tasked them to develop an automated system whereby we're going to use both the physical warehouse and the virtual warehouse. How it's going to work is that people, like we're developing this association of traders. So the Traders Association will have members who are the informal traders, your SMMEs, whoever is there in business. And they're going to have their cards, like your macro card, like your SPAR card, whatever it is. That card gives access to funding that's going to vest with Itala, through which they access the stock orders from the warehouse. Either they pick up the stuff or they get delivered to them. But the way it's going to work, you've got your fund sitting there under your name, under that Itala account. You got a card which you can go to that warehouse and swipe your card, and it reduces that amount which you supplement with your profits, however you want to do it. But what we're doing, we're separating a capital amount and the profit side of things, so that you can be able to say, from my capital account, which I had, I've worked like for 9 months, my profit has been this. So that card is like your mirror that your business looks through to say, am I making a difference in my life or not? But what is most important with this one is that the warehouse not only provides goods and services, it has to be a center of business support. It has to provide those in the, let's take for instance the school nutrition program. People who supply schools for school feeding schemes. They'd go to your local supermarket to buy bread. They would buy 15 loaves of bread from your local shop or whatever. At the end of the day, there's no profit margin for them because they maybe like escalate that maybe by 1 rand, by 20 cents. So what we're saying, if we are able to get the products directly from Tiger brand, if we have a contract with Albany Bread, we buy 10,000 bread every day. How much a discount are you having there? So you transfer the same discount to your traders. So what happens as well is that the department initially is going to invest in the infrastructure, but we're hoping that once the Association of Traders is capacitated enough to take over the ownership and the running of those businesses, slowly it's going to transfer that kind of what you call business processes to the association. But because government does not have capacity, like in this department, maybe there's only 5 of us in the MSME sector. So we're hoping to get the services of either NPOs that would deliver on behalf of the department services like your procurement, your negotiation for pricing, for distribution, everything else under that particular NPO that will be working with us. So we going for the NPO, not for institutions like your PTY Limited, because we know NPOs are non-profit making organizations. And secondly, being non-profit making organizations, they have a different mandate to those who are profit making people. So this is the kind of model, but although it has been in principle approved, still yet to go for more negotiation and deliberation among stakeholders.
To summarize, the idea then is that you'd have a non-profit organization, an NPO, that would now, who would be running that NPO?
The NPO is an NPO tasked by the department on its behalf to run the businesses of the particular warehouse.
Yeah, so the question is just how do you, who's going to establish the NPO is really what I'm getting at. I can see, are you going to have a tender process of people who come up and say, listen, I want to be the NPO for the 10th district? I mean, you know, if you take the Waste Management Act, for example, the system that's established there is that a waste management plan or an extended producer responsibility organization, which is really an NPO, who will be responsible for managing waste. You would have people who would apply for this plan, and then this extended producer responsibility organization would then carry it out under a budget, either funded by the state or funded directly by the producers. So I'm just interested in knowing how you find the NPO, who establishes the NPO, how do you see this process evolving?
What has been agreed as yet is that as government, we cannot just have what you call a waiver to appoint anybody that you want. You have to go open. So we'll be calling for expression of interest for those people who are able to do what you want them to do. And then from those expression of interest, then we'll be able to appoint the NPO that will be able to do that work.
And then there would be a contract between the department and the NPO. Which would involve initial support or support for setup and for the like, and then this automated card system. I mean, that's essentially that IP would then become, the NPO would have a royalty arrangement with you, and well, not royalties, but I mean a use relation, and then they would go through and contract with the suppliers and contract with the traders. On the mall tenancy framework, this framework, I know that it's still in the process of being finalized. It would be very useful for us if we could see even your, what that framework looked like. I mean, I certainly would also like to see the documentation that you have around this bulk buying program of yours as well.
Thank you. Mr. Mzila, you mentioned the KZN informal economy policy that was adopted in 2010. Can you provide us with a copy of that policy? So I've got a whole list of those documents that I would like, and as well as the NIBUS document. We would also like to see the 2015 KZN business bill. Yeah, the bill would be important for us. And then the draft KZN master plan for transitioning of informality that was developed. We know it's a draft, it's in a draft form, but we'd like to see that draft anyway. Yes. And then you said consultations will take place this year, or have they taken, they've taken place already in 2017? Okay. And then you mentioned that in KwaZulu-Natal there were 54 municipalities and there are currently 43 municipalities. Just explain to us how are you interacting, what kind of work are you doing with the municipalities, and what their role is in everything that you've explained here today.
Thank you. I think I'll maybe just put some clarity in regard to that. The Businesses Act was assigned to provinces, and then as such, the MEC responsible for economic development then appointed municipalities as licensing authorities. I mean, as we all understand, all trade, whether formal or informal, happened at the local level, at the municipal level. However, we are as a custodian of the legislation at the provincial level, that the municipality are responsible for actually issuing or refusing of permit or licenses. And how we work through once the policy was actually approved, we were tasked then by the cabinet then in 2010 that we now need to go to each municipality to have their own policy on informal economy. So they'll be able to issue permits, designate space for trading, and be able to come up with bylaws that are actually in line with the provincial policy. And as part of our APP, which is our annual performance plan, we have one liner there that says support the municipality in terms of adoption of their policies. And what we do is we visit each municipality. We actually present in terms of this is what the provincial police expect you as a municipality to do, And then we sit down with the municipality that do not have capacity to go and actually appoint external service providers. We help them in terms of development of the municipal policy. As Dumsan has indicated, we've done that in all 43 municipalities. But as the province, we can only go as far as developing a final draft. Then it's up to the municipality to take it through to MANCO, EXCO, full council for adoption. As it stands now, as Dumsan indicated, 43% have undergone that process, and others are still in the tracks whereby maybe the council was not functional, or it went through to the council had made comments. So that's where it actually sits right now. But we currently have a team that is solely responsible for assisting municipalities in terms of development of policies and also monitoring in terms of our municipalities implementing the legislation as it's supposed to. Because I've indicated that the MEC solely is the buck stops with him because he's the one who actually appoints municipalities in that space.
Do you have any internal document that sets out the policy as you've explained to each of those 43 municipalities? And can you make that available to us so that we see what was communicated and what was expected of the municipalities to do? One.
Definitely we do have. In fact, we even have developed a standardized policy for municipality, where it's a matter of the municipality to just change and tweak it here and there, cross the T's, dot the I's. But we can actually provide you with the report in terms of from 2010, what we've been doing and what kind of support we've been providing. Also together with the standardized provincial policy for municipalities. Okay.
And when you do provide us with that document, I would like to request that you also give us the names of the 43 municipalities, just so that we don't have to go back and redo that work, because you already have it anyway. Yeah. And then you also mentioned that the implementation obviously lies with the municipality itself, and the adoption of that policy lies with the municipality. Who's monitoring the implementation?
Again, it is our section, Regulation Services. Part of it is that we visit municipalities, we sit down with them and say, the Business Act, you are expected as a municipality to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can we see from your files, are we actually doing this? As per the provincial policy on informal economy, you're supposed to be doing 1, 2, 3. Let's see what you're doing. And we've been getting information from the municipality. Solely, we are the unit that is responsible for monitoring the implementation of these legislations.
Can you give us a flavor, just a sense of how far that implementation has gone or is going, and so that we know which municipalities have not done this, or which ones are doing it, and which ones are far ahead with it? Are you able to do that?
I think Mr. Mzila will actually touch base on this, because the official that do the monitor report directly to him, he can give us more flash.
So just a flavor, you don't have to.
What we do as per our reporting function might be different from what you require. But on an ongoing basis, we just monitor, and we can say, like, the stats that are provided there are current. There. You see, there's the 40% that we can say are there, but if we need proof of that, we might have to give you copies of the adoption or the council, but we don't keep that. It's kept by the municipalities. It is their role to ensure that. Yes. But when they report to us that our policy has passed through council, they always send us, not all of them, but some of them do send us what you call the council resolution. What I can definitely give to you is a survey that we did 2 years ago.
My colleague is pointing out that we don't really need proof, but you could maybe just identify those that have adopted. Yes.
In the spreadsheet that you can give you for the 43 municipalities.
Exactly.
Okay, not a problem.
Yeah.
But also what we can provide is the study that we did 2 years ago, which was asking specific questions as to how municipalities are faring in terms of compliance to the provincial policy. The study is in a 30-page document that we can provide as well.
That's fine.
Okay.
That will do. Thank you. And You mentioned in your, Mr. Mzila, you mentioned in your presentation, I'll just speak to that at a high level. I don't think I'll speak specifically on the point that we're making, or on the licensing. What do you see to be the value of licensing or to be the purpose of licensing informal businesses?
Thank you. For informal businesses, we say it's permitting. The reason being, when this policy was developed, there was a huge cry that some people own about 10 trading spaces, 12 trading spaces, whereas people are still wanting to get into the sector, but they can't because one person is just like monopolizing the sector. So the policy then, according to their submissions, was very clear that one household, one stall. For the reason that there's an influx and saturation of the market, so we needed to find a way in which to balance the need and the demand. I mean, the demand and the supply. So what has happened is that the policy itself is very, very clear on the role of the municipality in enabling it to demarcate positively for the sector.
Yes.
So the site demarcation plan is very, very clear that the municipality needs to even go as far as doing GPS coordinates for each trader in the municipality so that we can know exactly who is when doing what. The reason being, when we have everybody permitted, because of the saturation of the market, almost half of the people that are in this sector are illegitimate. By virtue that either they are foreign nationals that are illegal in the country, or they are in the market as a smoke screen to do other shoddy business using informal trading as a front, and a lot of other issues. So if we have everybody permitted, placed exactly where they have to trade on a particular sector within which they trade, then we're able to say, but that is not what should be. What is it that is there? We're able to monitor compliance. We're able to plan. If we are to say we need to do a budget for stalls in our municipality, for how many people are we doing it for? We don't even know, because we don't even have a register or a permit system that allows people to trade, because we are trying to promote compliance. If we are not compliant at any level of our economy, we are calling for disaster, because we're going to have a lot of illegal and illicit businesses mushrooming there, and that destroys the caliber of our economy.
Thank you. Not specifically, I don't attribute this to KZN specifically, but we have picked up, for example, that the licensing aspect or the permitting aspect by municipal requirement by municipalities on small businesses tends not to be well explained to the actual operators, and there's a gap between the purpose and the enforcement. And the manner in which things are done. To what extent are you making sure that, or have you made sure that there's good consultation where the operators on the ground have actually bought in or understood the purpose, and therefore are almost self-regulating, so to speak, or just wanting to comply because they know this is also serving, it's good for them, especially those that are legitimate operators?
Thank you, Ma. I submitted there in the third bullet of the slide that all 43 municipalities have functional informal economy chambers. Informal economy chambers are democratically elected. They represent all sectors of the informal economy actors in that municipality, and their committee sits with the planning, LED, and the municipality task teams to determine where the trading spaces should be, the designs for stalls, if any, to be planned, the budgets and everything else. So that is the responsible component of the entire informal economy sector that represents all traders in there. So in this instance, all municipality traders are aware of the policy.
Yes.
They are advocates of that policy. And up to the provincial level, because from the municipality, there's a district chamber, then a provincial chamber. It is a fully constituted body representing those traders. So we don't have a problem in this province whereby there is a discord between the need and the understanding of the beneficiaries of that particular thing. Maybe Sanel?
And when were those chambers established?
In 2011 May, when the MEC launched the policy on informal economy, they were there by end of July that particular year. And this year, towards the end of the year, their term is about to expire, so the new elections will be happening at municipal level.
To what extent have these, because I'm thinking of for example, the huge xenophobic attack or violence that erupted in 2013. That was 2 years after the chamber. Those chambers had been in place. To what extent would you say what you're doing is actually working to the extent that in future, any issues that relate to competition between foreign nationals and local nationals are addressed in those chambers, for example, whatever issues there are regarding permitting, operational, whatever concerns informal businesses are addressed.
Or maybe before Sanel,
the effectiveness of this.
There's one area that we need to understand. The xenophobic attacks were happening at a level of your semi-formal, semi-informal status of businesses. There's those operating in your spaza shops and whatever it is, which form part of the informal economy sector. But I can say right now, if the chambers were not present, you could have seen something worse. Sure. They've been responsible to quell, to talk to members. Like I would take, for instance, the case of Chesterville. I mean, that community would have banned in August last year if those business forums and chambers were not in place. So that's the kind of influence that they have, because they have constituencies that they report to. Okay. But like, people are not the same, and areas are not the same, and the transgressions are not the same. Okay. But when areas have got evidence of misconduct by those people, they are fighting misconduct, not the person. Okay. So we need to understand and separate those two issues. Okay. Because if there's evidence that that shop are doing this, and unfortunately for us, it is a foreign-owned shop, automatically it's going to be called xenophobia, because there's an attack on a foreign-owned shop. Whereas it is not the shop or the person, it is the atrocity committed by that establishment. Sanele?
And maybe just my submission as well in terms of moving forward. I think Dumsane has touched base on the fact that if the chambers went there, the situation would have been worse. And also, I think some of the issues that when eventually the Prima commissioned the study on xenophobia that came out of that particular finding, were some of the things that the chambers had actually brought to the fore to the government official and the municipality in terms of the competition. How come they're competing with someone from Swaziland who's not paying for the space, who do not have a permit, but the municipal officials are just allowing them to trade? I think what we've then done is, I think Dumsane did indicate the KZN automated application system. It's an online system. I think we all live in the 21st century. It's a system whereby a trader using their cell phone can just log into that system and then put through their application. The good thing about it is that it's linked with Home Affairs. So automatically now, if Selepi put his ID number there, then Home Affairs will block him and say, no, this number is not valid, it's not a South African number. If Selepi put his visa permit number there, it's going to say, no, but according to Home Affairs, you're only here to study or to work, not to run a business, then it stops them. So those are some of the things that we're actually busy with in terms of just rolling them out in such a way that it addresses some of the query that they were raising in terms of saying, how do we as government allow someone illegal to trade in the country? And then we also find one thing in terms of saying, then how then do we have that particular situation? And I'm glad to say that that automated system has just been finalized. We should be launching in a month or two. Obviously, we still need to workshop it with the traders as themselves, and also the municipalities who are actually going to be implementing the particular system. But we believe that with that system, it will actually help us in great deal, because we'll know who's actually been awarded a permit. Are they rightfully supposed to be in that space? And again, we'll still find out, for example, if I myself work for government, the system will be able to pick up that, no, Mr. Ngwan works for government, then the system will block you, because we also have those situations again whereby you find that government official, the councillors, or someone who's supposed to be a formal owned business in Umhlanga is currently having about 1 or 2 stores here in West Street, Durban. So the system would be linked with SARS and CPI just to curb those particular issues.
That sounds good. I'm not sure if you, Mr. Ngubane, or Mr. Mzila will answer this question. He touched on the issue on the tension that existed in Chesterville and how the chambers managed to quell that. We would like, if it's possible, to maybe a document that speaks on what happened there and how this was successful in doing that, just to see whether it addresses some of the concerns that arise from what we are doing. So I don't necessarily want a response on that.
Yeah, maybe I can touch base with that one, that it was a very long process, but the engagement and the involvement of the business forum, even when their lives were at risk, I have to say that their lives and our lives were at risk, okay, because of the intensity of the situation there. Yes, we've got the document that we've prepared for our principals in terms of recommendations as to what needs to be done, yes, not only in Chesterville, but in the entire province to quell further. Yes. So our principals are yet to act on those recommendations because they were tabled at Metro, the MEC for Economy, our MEC, yes, MEC for Safety and Security, and MEC for COCTA. So the same document went to the 3 MECs for their sign-off and eventual implementation.
Okay. Would you be able to share that with us?
Because you're the commission, I think we should share, yes.
Yeah, just to see, because if it worked in Chesterville, it's something that can be considered elsewhere. And you intend to roll it out in the whole province for that matter. So, yeah. Okay, thanks. You also mentioned in relation to the warehouse, what did you call them, the bulk buying warehousing, that you're working with Itala Bank there. We've had a submission on the dispensing of social grants, and the point was made by business operators coming from the townships, rural areas. It was an organization that came here to make a submission, saying that what happened was social grants got removed from those areas, and they were taken to cities, and they lost business because when I won't say pension, it's not only pensioners who get social grants, but when the recipients of social grants get their money, they then spend it where they are and not necessarily take it back to the communities that they come from. And a suggestion was made, or even a proposal, that it would have been good if Itala Bank could set up ATMs in the informal businesses, so that, and not just setting up those ATMs, but also setting up, making sure that the dates are the same as anywhere else, so that you don't have your social grants recipients running to the cities because they realize in town I can actually get my social grant earlier, whereas in the township or as Lalini, I'll get it on the 15th. And that's not what they want to see. They want dates that are actually the same. You have not mentioned any work that you're doing with the Department of Social Services, for example, and on this aspect. Are you doing any work with social services on this point?
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, actually, maybe that was an omission because, but part of the program of the bulk buying and warehousing model is that by virtue of bringing in cheaper priced goods back to the communities, we're saying if I used to spend 150 to do my groceries at ShopRite Checkers in town, I can still spend my 135 for the same groceries here in the township, where I will access my social grant. So part of the plan is that, okay, the task team members include a DSD, which is a social security people. And part of our program is piggybacking on some of their contracts that they already have for their soup kitchens, for their whatever, with the Unilevers and Taka brands. So we are working in tandem. What is most important here is that by virtue of bringing those cheaper priced goods back to the communities, Itala provides those virtual pay pawns in those particular shops identified in those communities. We're saying Ugogo or aunt or whoever is going to go for the social grant is now able to walk 20 steps to that shop, buy his groceries, get his cash, and stay here. So the fiscus circulates within the community. So that now brings back that economic base back to the communities. So that's part of the bulk buying model that we've developed. It was an omission, I'm sorry.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
On the warehouse, bulk buying warehouses, you mentioned that you're planning to have 11, but there's already one that has been established. I didn't get where you said that is at.
That one is within Mkungundlovu district.
So what is it, Twale?
No, it is under Mkungundlovu district. In the area it's called Eston.
Oh, in Eston.
Yes, ESTON.
Okay.
Yes.
Eston.
It's been refurbished, but what is only left inside there is the mechanization of
it's
the.
In Mkungundlovu would be Pietermaritzburg.
No, it's a district.
Mkungundlovu in Pietermaritzburg.
Emma, Pietermaritzburg is a city within the district of Mkungundlovu, which has got 5 municipalities.
Okay.
So this particular warehouse is situated in one of the municipalities within the district of Mkungundlovu.
Okay.
Yes, Mkungundlovu, well, in the past was the typical name for Pietermaritzburg, but now it's being a district.
Okay.
Yes.
You mentioned 11, and I would imagine, is there a plan to grow these warehouses beyond 11 in time? So you're not going to end up sitting with those 11 warehouses. Is there a plan to grow to make sure that you spread? Because I can't imagine them being enough.
Yes, they'll never be enough. Like, for instance, the discussion that we had a couple of weeks back, even though we're going to have that massive warehouse, let's say in eThekwini, which represents that district warehouse for eThekwini, if you still have satellite warehouses like, Pink area, western areas, southern areas, you're feeding from the main warehouse. Nothing stops for that particular growth. It's been under discussion as well, but the focus is that let's first do the 11,
yes, conclude
them, and then that can replicate to other secondary warehouses that support that one as well. Okay. Like if you look at the Durban area, Pink on its own is like another Soweto. You're down south, your Mlazi, Lamontville, and whatever, your western Pinetown, Hill Crest. There are a lot of regions in Durban, so one warehouse will never be enough for anybody. But as a start, we need to start somewhere.
Okay.
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
Just so you have a non-profit organisation established for Eston. So you have not yet.
Not yet. Still waiting for. Okay. The process was that the MEC will start it off with cabinet. We've got an in principle approval by our MEC, who is in consultation with the MEC for education for the nutrition and supply feeding scheme. Okay. With your social services, with your health MEC for hospitals, clinics, with the correctional services for your prisons and stuff. So you want to have that all state supplied or state institutions that receive food would have to work through this year program. So we're finalizing that first before we know the extent to which the operation is going to be. So when the MEC launches, he launches that particular warehouse with contracts so that the following day people are already going to come and be doing that work. So the expression of interest will await that confirmation first, okay, then expression of interest, then the appointment and the launch. So that when he launches the actual warehouse, not a building as such.
May I just ask a further question? I mean, why would they express an interest? I understand when in a normal tender, you tender because you hope to profit from it.
The trick of it is that with government processes, we need transparency. We know the legislation that govern transparency in government and your PMFA and all those type of things. If Ngobane owns an NGO, Silepe owns an NGO, I own the NGO, then how do we know? I mean, if any one of us just gets appointed without any public advertisement for expression of interest, is that transparent enough? What gave that department to be able to hire Ngobane over and above the others? So it is an issue of saying, are you capable? And we need to be transparent about everything else.
But
I suppose the question is, you know, NGOs operate in a certain sector. I mean, to run a warehouse with the kind of system that you're talking about seems to me would require someone with business acumen rather than organizational acumen. I mean, NGOs maybe I'm not characterizing them correctly, but they tend to be pressure groups. They tend to be organizing, good at organizing matters. They're good at research. They're good at all those kinds of things. But warehousing is really a wholesale operation. It's a business skill. And I just wonder if you're going to get the right type of person. I think this is a great idea. So don't misunderstand me.
Can I just make an example? I don't know if anyone here remembers this NPO used to be called Food Bank. Yeah, you can go to your Google and find it. Do you know what it used to do? It started as an NGO assisting schools in the peri-urban and rural areas to get access to nutrition. So they used to develop gardens, they used to source cheaper food stuff for distribution. They were funded by your agencies, wherever it is. But in the way they perfected the idea of warehousing and bulk buying, that's where the first notion of bulk buying and warehousing came from. So those people are now, I think, they've been diluted, and there's a small branch left in the Western Cape. But those guys did a very good job as an NPO because they perfected the model that would work for the impoverished, for the poor, for the needy. So it's along those kind of models that we said it can happen as well. So if we could find a similar NPO that could do what a food bank used to do, then we would have won. But that's why we're saying, if we say expression of interest, we need to know what expertise you bring on the table. You know, what have you done before? What are your success stories? Then based on the success stories, then we can be say you are appointed to run those. And also the notion whether you want one for the entire province or one for each district, they're still under negotiation as well. Yeah.
My last point on this warehousing issue, you know, the issue of bulk buying and storage facilities has come out very strongly in the submissions coming from the informal sector and lack of these facilities, especially by local or national, what do you call them? Local traders, as opposed to foreign-owned business owners. And you then say in the model, the warehouse will then source goods from, you mentioned Tiger Brands, Unilever. There's also a very important aspect that has come through from most communities, township, both township and rural, where they feel their own producers and suppliers are left out in supplying to the retail. To what extent will this program take into account goods produced by those communities, whether in the township or Ezlalin?
Thank you, ma'am. I want to maybe inform this House that our MEC is the champion of the program called RASET. RASET stands for Rural Agrarian Social Economic Transformation Program, which is a local procurement program to procure from local people. So those warehouses, whatever dry goods they are available, whatever vegetables that are there, they will be supplying those warehouses, will be procuring locally. Right now, what has happened is that all regions of the province, agricultural regional managers, have submitted to RASET Secretariat business plans for their districts. How many cooperatives are here? What crops are being planted here? What are the yields in tonnage, in kilos, and whatever it is, so that when RASET kicks, it has just been launched. When RASET kicks up in to say, now we start, those warehouses will be drawing their supplies from those people. Also, we saying in these sectors, like for instance, the chicken industry, we are buying something like 500,000 chickens every month for one sector of the program, that is DSD warehouses. We haven't touched base with your school nutrition supply program. We haven't touched base with your other retail sectors. In total, we're looking at about 2 million worth of chicken that needs to be slaughtered every month.
Yeah.
So where do we get the chicken?
Yes.
we get it from your established people like your Rainbow, your Goldie, or whatever it is. Where are your localized chicken abattoirs producers? So on the other hand, the government is saying we need to provide enablers for the establishment of those local abattoirs. So if we're saying we're serious about socio-economic transformation, we need to provide those enablers for the local people to be able to do that. So what I'm trying to say is the supply side is taken care of in terms of RASET, but not all sectors are yet on board. So it's a gradual process to get everything else that's going to go to the warehouse being produced locally. So whatever that we cannot produce as communities, then you have to source from your other producers as well. Also, the bulk buying thing also touches base with your breaking and repackaging. Sure. Like for instance, if we had to import as an association of traders or as a province, 5 containers of rice every week from wherever they are produced. So the association must be responsible for repackaging of the rice and rebranding, because they were saying some people here are so poor they can't even afford 1 kilogram. So we need to break the bulk and repackage in smaller quantities for the benefit of each community that we serve. So those are part of the program in bulk buying that will take care of the nitty-gritties of the needs of our society. And RASET is one vehicle that we are using to achieve that.
More or less, when do you think this first warehouse will be up and running?
Sanele did say that we've done all that as officials we can do. It is now vesting with our principals to conclude on their deliberations in terms of getting, like we said, school nutrition program vest with education. Your clinics and hospitals vest with health. Correctional services is the national department that controls your correctional centers. And then you've got all your other different, so that discussion is almost towards the end. But we are hoping, our MEC was telling my boss here, we need to launch the association by the close of this year. Okay. So we're hoping we'll be launching the warehouse and the association of traders by the end of this year, yes.
Okay. You also mentioned the mall tenancy framework, on which you said any new mall that is being built in KwaZulu-Natal will now take into account, will try and accommodate local traders. What about the existing malls? What's the plan about the existing malls in those areas? Why? Because you're basically imposing, you're kind of burdening anyone who's coming up with a new mall, whereas the existing ones are exempted, so to speak. So how are you addressing that?
The Association of Traders is gunning to apply this new framework in retrospect. But there's been differing legal implications to apply it for the malls that already exist, because if they existed long before that legislation was in place or that framework was in place, it might be, it might cause room for litigation against government. Yeah. But that has not been finalized yet. Like we're saying, it is 80% finalized, but it's still going to go for public participation, so that we can have those views and say how legal this, how legal that, because some of the things that we don't want to find ourselves in is to work 9 months, 20 months, until at the end they were told our document is unconstitutional. Yeah. So we need to be wary of those provisions that direct us in the way we prepare our laws and frameworks. But I can tell you that the association wants it to be backdated to the first mall that it was ever built. But for now, we're saying any new mall that is being legally correct, or maybe politically correct, I would say.
Okay. I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Good morning. Just a few questions for clarification from my side. In your presentation, you mentioned that you had an independent group in Durban that did research on the informal sector and the state of the informal sector, as I understood it. Is that correct? Firstly, can we, is it possible for us to get the document that was prepared by that independent group that contains that information? And then secondly, I would like to ask your views on the statistics contained in that document. I think from our side, in our statement of issues, the inquiry statement of issues that is available on our website, we've seen different views as regards the state of the informal sector and specifically small and independent retailers in the country in general. I think some of the research show that there's been a decline in activity, and then there are other research that actually show an increase in retail activity in the informal sector and specifically as regards independent retailers. So for us, it's difficult to weigh up these different sources of information. What did your research show? What specifically did it show? Did it show a decline in the number of businesses or a decline in the growth of the businesses? Maybe if you could talk a little bit about what that research said as regards the state of the informal economy, specifically relating to the retail sector in your area.
Thank you, ma'am. On the first one, a number of studies are available around Durban, but there are other provincial or national studies that will provide. One of them was done by the ILO, which is International Labour Organization. The other one was done by StreetNet, that is headed by Petron. So those two are even available from the StreetNet website, but we can provide them as well. On the state of informal economy, I was speaking to the statistician from the Department of Statistics. There's a time last year, I think about August, when they released stats that there have been job losses in the informal economy sector. My question to them was, thanks Mr. Tema, yes. My question to him was, how did you determine that? And what is the definition of informality? Because that's where it starts. I mean, your definition in your set of informality might mean that it's all the people that are employed in the informal way, but in a formal business. My definition might be it's all the people that trade on the street. My definition would be all businesses that are not registered with SARS. So it depends on the definition of informality. So when you see stats being released, then we need to go back and say, the rationale behind the research that is being done, what was it? What did it aim to achieve? Because with that understanding, that then the stats will say whatever that it wants to say. To answer your question, according to our own ongoing, like Sonel was saying, our staff is always in the field, interacting with municipalities and stuff. I can tell you on any one day, on any one street, that there's a new trader. There's growth in business. That's the first question. Whether they are sustainable or not, that can only be determined once our online database registration works, because then we'll be able to say on the 14th of June 2017 we had 1 million traders in the entire province. The following day we had 950. In 3 weeks' time we had 1.5 million traders. So without that online web-based system, we cannot determine truly and effectively. And even if we want to develop your indexes for informal economy, how many women are in the informal economy? Nobody can say. How many people in agriculture? How many people in services? How many people in whatever? It's difficult to quantify it, let alone to qualify it, because, like I'm saying, it depends on the reasoning behind the study being carried out. So, but to answer the last one, in the retail sector is some people only come to town to sell on the last day of the month. Some come twice a month. Some come only on holidays. So what kind of traders are we looking at? So that's why we're saying the permitting system will give credibility to the information that you always have published. This online system that you're developing as a province is going to give us those answers. I can tell you in 18 months' time from now, I can answer that question truthfully, saying it's declining by the sector or it's increasing by the sector, and the numbers are like this, because we'll be having that working perfectly for the province as well. And we're aiming to influence other provinces to develop. Actually, Gauteng has come through to ask us to assist them to develop the system as well, because we feel as a country, without the proper statistics, we cannot even plan effectively for the sector. We'll be failing those people at that level.
Thank you. And then you also mentioned data on unemployment, that, and I think you specifically mentioned one large retailer. When you looked closely at the level of employment, a lot of it was informal or not on a permanent basis. Would you be able to share that research with us as well?
Unfortunately, no, because like we spoke of ICOREF, ICOREF is a body representing your Department of Labor, your Home Affairs, SARS, us, and the rest of the team. So in our meetings, they record that this is what we find when we do our inspections. And also, if you look at actually there's some research on the ILO database, website as well. Not specifically on this country, but in the southern, in SADC, where it highlights most of the formal businesses operating in an informal space by not defending worker rights, not giving them proper wages, not giving them enough benefits, no social security, and whatever it is. So it's a detailed study which I cannot say as a department we've got the study, but from our interactions with our colleagues at ICOREF and as well as the ILO stats that they give us now and again, that's why we get our source of information. And besides, from my own observation, I would say our office is next to SPAR. I'm sorry to mention names, but at the end of the day, all retailers are doing the same thing. I mean, we've spoken to the Consumer Goods Council, which is responsible for your Woolworths, your SPARs, and whatever. I said, these are the type of things that you guys must be looking into. These are the reports that we get. And most of the people, CEPISO will tell you, they get complaints every now and again. Some they refer them to the necessary bodies like your labor, your CMA, whatever it is. But the trend shows us that the informality is rife in the formal sector. So recommendation 204 is aiming to say we cannot informalize the formal sector. Rather, we transition informality to more formality because there are more benefits to formalize than to remain informal.
Would you be able to put us in touch with the relevant organizations that you are aware of that may have done a study like that? Thank you. The MSME Academy that you mentioned in one of your slides, could you perhaps tell us a little bit more about that? And a specific question that I have regarding that is, will that academy only be focusing on the retail sector? And who will be doing the training in that academy? And perhaps when will that academy be up and running?
Thank you, ma'am. The MSME Academy is linked to the Township and Rural Economic Revitalization Program. The reason why our businesses fail in the first 3 years is because of the lack of skills to run their businesses. And sometimes we can say it's lack of finance. You can give the person 20 million rand to run a business, they'll fall flat in 3 years. And the majority of those businesses is because of the lack of necessary and adequate skills to run the business. So the academy is aimed to say, let's identify the sectors that are poor, that are performing poorly. Let's look at the reasons why they're performing poorly. Let's make interventions that would reverse those deficiencies. And then let's monitor over 18 to 3 years and to see how we are improving. If we have a positive impact in 3 to 5 years, then we know that we are working. Then we continue. So the academy is not going to be focused on only one sector. It's all sectors of the economy. But like you know that the province, or all provinces identify 5 main sectors that they want to work with in a particular time frame. So like with us, we've got manufacturing, we've got your agriculture, we've got tourism, we've got, I think it's 5 of them anyway. So the academy will be focusing on those 5 as well, but you won't be taking 5 all at one time. We'll say which is the weakest performing sector here. Let's work on that one. And the launch of the academy, we were hoping is going to be concurrent to the launch of the association and the warehouse, but it's still being delayed because the documentation towards that is being prepared by the same unit that is preparing the multi-tenancy framework. So we need to give the guys some breaks. So they are working parallel to each document, but we cannot give a date of the launch. But we can give the detail of the colleague at work that deals with those 2 documents. Then you can be in contact with him, then he can give more credibility to what I'm saying.
Thank you, that would be useful.
Thank you.
To come back to the issue of voluntary compliance by traders and licensing, and then the system that you envisage setting up, what would it cost a trader that is informal to register to register and to become compliant?
Thank you, ma'am. For informal trader to register on the same level in an informal trading space, it will cost virtually nothing during the application process. However, each municipality charges a minimum amount of 30 Rand per store per month, but it depends. For example, in Durban, if you look at West Street or Beachfront, those are your prime areas. The rental space there might be much higher, which is why I think, again, if we indicate that the introduction of that automated system is so that it limit the time for the trader to actually go and wait in the queue at the municipality. They can actually do it on their phones, put through an application, scan whatever they need to be scanned. So we're trying to move away from paper to electronics, and then that's actually virtually nothing except for the data that they might have to pay for when they're actually doing the actual application. But in terms of the cost, it's just a matter of the monthly cost that the municipality charges per store.
And what would be the benefit for them to register?
The benefit is actually twofold. Again, we come from government. For us as government, as Dimsan has indicated, we need to regulate the sector. We need to know who's doing what, doing where. I'll make an example of the taxi industry, and we all know, we all fear the taxi industry. The mainly is because no one can just quickly go and then put my tax that, oh, it's a month end, I'm going to have my taxi from Durban to Mlas. And then that's work well for the people who are within the tax industry. And what the traders have been saying to us as government is that I've been on this table for the past 20 years. But every time, during a certain time of the month, instead of me making 500 a day, I end up making 200 because about three or four other people just comes and set up their space next to mine and no one is complying. I think that's one of the reasons why we want to have this system. It's going to be linked with the municipality in such a way that the municipal inspectors are going to go with the gadget whereby they go around the store and then they can just scan your tag, and then the tag is going to reflect on the system that, no, this is supposed to be Mr. Ngubane trading in fruit and veg. In that way, then we're trying to go back to the point that you're saying, the voluntary compliance as well. So I think it's got some benefits for them, but also to piggyback on other issues like the Traders Association. At the end, I think maybe Prof, to answer you as well, that the running of the bulk buying, the Trader Association is putting their hands up in terms of saying, allow us as a trade association to actually run this warehousing. Again, in them, they are saying that only those registered traders would be able to actually partake and piggyback on the bulk buying. So it helps them in that way. And again, Tumsane mentioned that we had the ITAP, which is the Informal Traders Upliftment Program. It was a training for amounting to 9,000. And then the cash contribution of equal amount, but it was not actually given to you cash. Government would be buying equipment that you actually need, if you need a table or a gas stove and so forth. But the National Department was saying that we can only give someone who actually have a valid permit issued by the municipality. And then you find that municipalities up in the north, whereby they do not have permits issued by the municipality, did not actually end up partaking in this particular program. So it's mainly, it adds up for them in terms of trying to close the market so that they know exactly who's trading, everyone who's trading actually have permits, but also any other program, whether it's skills development or upliftment program that come from government, they'll be able to put their hands up. And I think just 4 years back, sorry to take more time, there was a funding from one of the banks, Standard Bank. It was part of their responsible fund. Then they were saying that we can give you this funding provided that you actually have a permit. And then we were caught wanting there in a sense that I think it ended up being KZN and Western Cape who ended up participating in that program because we are the only province in South Africa that actually had permits. But then again, it was only in KZN, it was only your Durban, Pietermaritzburg, Richards Bay, and South Coast, your major cities that actually benefited from that particular initiative. So we're saying that through this registration system, it will be easy for them to register, but you'll also give them that legal status for a business. And then hopefully then allowing them to see the benefits, and then also we can be able to monitor them as government. At the end, we want to collect tax from them, let's be honest. And at the end, we'll be actually knowing in terms of what are they doing. There is some improvement in your income. So maybe you now need to graduate to another level so that MECU Kekaba can have more fiscal in his accounts.
Sorry, one more thing. On the issue of the cost, you know, when we were doing the consultations on the bill, the businessmen were complaining on the cost of doing business, that is complying with the administrative costs. Municipalities were saying, hooray, this bill is giving us a lot of fiscus. So like it depends from which side of the coin you look at it. But at the end of the day, if you look at issues of xenophobia as such, do you think there can be xenophobia when everybody is known who is where and doing what? Even if you come from Kenya, but if you're a legitimate business, you get your stall, that's where you sell, and you become a member of the association, it's all fair competition. Licensing and permitting provides a fair advantage for everybody else. Because if you are unlicensed and people do unscrupulous things, some people would have an upper hand, show the upper hand, but have an unfair advantage over others. So licensing and permitting is the only way to standardize and regularize the sector.
Following up on the issue of graduating of informal businesses graduating, you mentioned earlier that there are a couple of traders that perhaps have more or monopolizes all the stands, and that you are aiming towards a one household, one stand regime. So I understand the problems that are faced with perhaps one trader monopolizing all the stands. But if there is a rule of one household per stand, does that not inhibit growth to a certain extent, with a small trader wanting to graduate but not being able to do so without having additional space to do so? And then there's also the issue of economies of scale, not necessarily here in Durban, but in our public hearings in Johannesburg. We've heard a lot of complaints regarding, or we've heard information to the extent that you can't really be competitive if you don't have economies of scale and if you don't have more to work with. So have you incorporated that, or have you thought about that in this policy? And if so, do you have additional measures that you can put in place to further foster growth and to assist these informal traders to graduate to bigger businesses?
I'll touch base and then allow Timsan also to respond. I think the one trader, one space or one permit was actually an issue that was raised by the trader themselves. I remember in 2010 we actually in Durban, and then that's when the situation was even worse, where they were saying that Mr. Knight from Chatsworth actually have about 7 stores that is actually operating in Durban. And then you look at the about 150 people who are actually on the waiting list, waiting to get space in that particular road frontage. So as such, we then said, okay, the resolution was taken by the cabinet, because when we took the policy to cabinet, we gave them options in terms of maybe per household you can have 2 or 3. Then they said, no, let's have 1 per household. Understanding so where the traders were coming from. But then again, one understands the economies of scale in terms of saying that in December time, the thing that are popular on the market might not necessarily be the same as in June or in July and so forth. But I think the problem is then we need to give everyone a fair chance, in a sense that we can't allow a situation whereby Tumsan has about 4 or 5 stores, because we need to cater for everyone. I think Tumsan did indicate that almost every day people are losing their job in the formal setup. The first thing that they run to is informal trading, and it's the only option that they can get. People are graduating from varsities or schools. They're not able to get jobs. Then again, they also go into the informal trading space. So we wanted to keep it that particular way. The system, as I've indicated, allows one ID. Once you put in your ID, the permit has been issued for you to trade in Richards Bay. The moment that you move from Richards Bay, you go and apply for another store in Pietermaritzburg or Newcastle, which is about 600 kilometers away. As long as you're within the case, then the system will pick you up. They say, no, you are registered in Richards Bay. First, go resign yourself in Richards Bay before you can trade in Newcastle. But maybe Tumsano, you'll want to add something there.
That's all from my side. Thanks.
Thank you very much for a very informative session. We will take a break now for tea. There is another stakeholder, Imzweletu Butchery. Okay.
I just want to comment that, your submission is very impressive, especially coming from the government. And it goes a long way for us in addressing some of the, many of the issues that this inquiry is faced with. and is mandated to deal with. So it would be such a great thing to see if everything you say will be done or you're planning to do does get implemented, especially at the level of municipality, because that's where we are seriously battling from our side. We've been able to speak to some government departments and have interactions, and even having government departments like yourselves coming to appear before us, but it's such a struggle for us as an inquiry to have municipalities coming forward to enable us to understand how they actually operate. So you being the monitors of what of the policies that you're adopting will go a long way for us in addressing these issues. Thank you very much.
So we'll break for, what's the time now?
The time now is 11:45.
Shall we reassemble at 5 to 12? What's happening? You say it's from the red and white, but it doesn't look like it.
That's what someone said to me. Ian?
Where is he? Oh, is the problem? Mr. Sibu is really. Yeah, Mr. Sibu is Lewetu.
Izweletu.
Is Lewetu.
That's him.
It is him.
It is him.
Why would he?
I don't know why.
Odd. Yeah, it's not him. Yeah, right. Okay, we're having some difficulty locating him, so we'll just have to wait another 5 minutes. I'm going to call Mr. Sibu Dube. Is he here? Because somehow or another he doesn't appear to be present. Accordingly, I will have to adjourn the proceedings. He was here. He seems to have disappeared. I think we can't wait any longer. So I'm going to close the session. There won't be a hearing this afternoon, and we will reopen at 10 o'clock tomorrow.
At 9, is it not?
No, 10 tomorrow and 9 on Friday, I think it is. It's 10 tomorrow and 9 on Friday.